Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Marked Out Wrestling Podcast. My name is Brian Tamborello, and let me just say it is not every day that you get a message from a former OVW wrestler. It's also not every day that you get a text message from a former six-time OVW Southern Tag Team Champion. His name is BJ Payne, and I was fortunate enough to be introduced to BJ, and we texted back and forth and led to us recording a podcast together. So here is that podcast. We go over his career at OVW, a little bit afterwards, what led to him leaving OVW, and so much more. He was at OVW during a time when John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, Rico Constantino when he was there. All of the guys that you used to watch back in like the early 2000s Brock is still fucking killing it. And so is Randy. He was there with those guys. He used to work with Jim Cornette, and he talks about it. He also goes into a lot of different stuff about his career, and we just had a good conversation. So without further ado, here's my conversation with BJ Payne.
BJ, thank you for taking the time to out of your day to talk to me and talk wrestling and talk to the listeners too. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. This is pretty cool. I've had an opportunity to do a couple of these, and I love talking about the business and everything that goes into it. So it's pretty exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, no. So I'm so intrigued. Like, I'm not blowing smoke. Like, seriously, like you were in OVW from 99 to 03?
Yes.
Okay. To me, that's just like such a crazy time. Cause I mean, obviously, you had Jim Cornette working there. You had Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin. I mean, all the guys that you see on TV now, I mean, a lot of them you were back there with them and working with them. So I just want to know, I kind of want to start from the beginning. Like, how did you get involved? Was OVW your first start? Like, did they train you or did you start somewhere else?
So my whole dream since I was 5 years old was to be a professional wrestler. I grew up a huge fan of the business. Honestly, more of a NWA fan, Rock and Roll Express, Dusty, Ric Flair, everybody. I was more into the wrestling dynamic part of it than the entertainment portion. But obviously became a WWF fan, and but it's what I wanted to do since I was 5 years old. Most kids wanted to be pro baseball players, policemen, firemen. I wanted to go a different route. I wanted to be a professional wrestler. My parents knew it, were very supportive, and their whole thing is we'll support you through all of this. Just, get your college degree.
Sure.
And so I, played sports in high school, graduated, went on and played football at Mount Union College. Very fortunate to be on a great team there and have a great career, 3 national championships. But I knew I wanted to go the route of professional wrestling. So I started researching some things, and there was a guy that was local named Greg Anderson, who wrestled as an indie wrestler named The Rogue. And he also actually trained Alan Funk, who was Kiwi,
yeah.
Kiwi in WCW. So he trained Alan as well.
Okay.
And so I started training with him. So literally, like, we played in the national championship game, like December 14th on a Saturday. And that Sunday, the next day, I started training in a ring in Weirton, West Virginia. As independent backyard garage wrestling school as you can imagine. Like,
right.
I think, if I remember, there was one rope that was missing in the ring. I think it was the top rope, which makes no sense because you can get away with the bottom rope, but you got to have the top rope.
Yeah.
But that's how I started training. And so I was set to graduate in May. I'm going to graduate from school, and I started training. Well, through my last couple of years at Mount Union playing football, I had a radio show.
Okay.
So I had a radio show on campus of Mount Union, and it was called the House of Payne Show. And I was a huge wrestling fan. Like I said, I grew up a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
And every, Monday night was during that, the Monday Night Wars were during that time. And during that time now I had become I wasn't a WCW guy. I was an NWA.
Okay.
And then I had become a WWE guy during that time, WWF, I guess, at the time. And, every Monday night, all of our, football players, our team would watch Raw. And we would have film sessions, and our defense coordinator knew, like, hey, I got to be done by 15 minutes before.
Right.
But I had a radio show. So I went up and somehow I finagled my way and got backstage and got a bunch of sound bites for my radio show.
Okay.
So I got like at the time, like Vader did one, D'Lo Brown did one, Savio Vega did the best because he was like, you're listening to the House of Spain. And it was like, no, can you redo that? That's a House of Spain. He was like, I said that. Okay, you're listening to the House of Spain. And D'Lo was there and we're just dying laughing and gave him like 6-7 takes. Austin did one, which was,
oh my God.
He's red hot, right?
Yeah.
He does one. He's like, hey, when you tune it into the House of Pain, rip that dial off and stick it up your ass.
That's a good impression right there.
Yeah. So he does the whole deal. And so D'Lo and I actually sat and talked for about a half hour.
Okay.
Formed a relationship bond. And then, we stayed in touch. He knew that was my dream. His story was kind of the same. And, anytime the next month or two, they would come to Cleveland, go to the Gund Arena, I would go up there and see D'Lo. And so D'Lo originally helped me get my foot in the door because he knew I was trying. He got me in touch with Jim Cornette.
Okay.
And so that's when I got a hold of Corny. And then I got brought down to OVW. I went down there without a contract. Went down there, started training, met with Danny Davis first because, Danny ran the school.
Yep.
Rip was a part of it, but Rip wasn't as big at that time as far as hands-on.
Okay.
Jimmy was the booker and the matchmaker. Let me correct that. It doesn't like the term booker. He likes matchmaker. But sat down with Danny and Danny said, look, I know here's what you're chasing and here's what you want to do. This is what I charge for the school. I'm not going to charge you for the school, but just so you know, you're not going to get a payday from me for as long as you're here. Right. That'll be our trade-off. And I said, fine, deal. And, I was down there probably, I don't know, maybe like 6 months.
What year? This is like 98, 99?
This is 99.
99.
So I graduated from college, like whatever it was, May 5th and May 6th, I went down there.
Wow. That's awesome.
And then, started training and I was recovering from my broken piece of my kneecap, came back from that and started training down there. I think about 6 months in is when I first signed my developmental contract and, down there working, but like I said, it was Danny. So when I first got there, everybody they had just transitioned. So all the local guys were there still. It was, Nick Densmore, Doug Basham, Danny Basham, who was Damager at the time.
Damager, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Some old guys that were there, like Jerome Croney, who was like American Eagle, and Jason Lee, and Derek King, those guys. But that's when they started bringing in. So I saw the cluster of the guys that came in that were really good and made something out of it, and then also the guys who came in and really weren't busting their ass and thought they had it made in the shade and thought that they were just going to be big time in that area. And, they were under contracts and, never made it,
right.
They thought too much of themselves. And then I saw some guys that flat out should have been called up, would have been electric, would have been absolutely amazing and just never got that opportunity. A guy named Slick Robbie D is that guy.
Okay.
Slick Robbie D, if you watch his stuff, he was phenomenal. He was a version of The Rock, All-American wrestler at Fresno State, was an amateur guy, huge athleticism, and could talk. And he ended up getting released, and then some situation happened, and he was in prison, and he was found dead.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So he's, he's the one that you really look back on and like, man, that's a dude that for whatever reason didn't make it, that really should have, because he had all the tools in the tool belt. So
I'm sorry, go on.
No. He's he's a guy that you saw that should have made it. Then you saw guys that came down there that, they
went through the motions.
They went through the motions. They made mistakes. They did things like trying to date Danny's daughters. Like,
oh yeah,
like the golden rules that Danny tells you, like when you arrive at OVW, Danny says, we got 3 rules in OVW. Number 1, you don't touch my daughters. Number 2, you don't touch my daughters. And number 3, you don't fucking touch my daughters. Those are the 3 rules that were OVW. Very clear, concise rules.
Yeah.
I mean, very, very clear. You know, we all during that time saw a situation where something didn't work out well because taking one of the daughters out, and we came in and kind of knew it was coming. But you know, it was old school. I mean, it was the way, you know, the business that, you know, Randy and I always talk about it. It was the last true independent. I mean, you can have whatever you want to or whatever, but OVW was the true last independent that were true independents. Well, we legit got fired for breaking kayfabe, for going out together. Corny would see us, which was really weird too, because, you know, Corny would go out too. And then so it was okay if you were with Corny, but if you weren't with Corny, you were breaking kayfabe and you got fined. And, you know, and it was like, you know, like all of a sudden, like $100 fine, like you're doing a garden show and all of a sudden you don't get paid because, I mean, that was a big deal.
That's a big deal. Yeah. Oh, I imagine. Yeah, totally.
So, but yeah, I mean, I don't mean to keep going. I'll let you go, but
no, it's fine. Keep going.
Stories are absolutely endless there.
Well, with Corny, you said?
Just with everything.
Oh, just everyone.
Danny, you know, Rip.
Couldn't even imagine
the guys there, the shows we did, the traveling, and it was
that's what I'm saying. Like that era of OVW, just to me, is just so awesome. Just because there's so many crazy names that were all down there, just trying to, you know, cut their teeth in the business, and it's all. So, how long did you train at OVW before you had your first official match?
I was probably about 2 or 3 months.
Oh, wow. That's pretty fast.
Yeah. The way they did it down there is so our weekly schedule was Monday through Friday were training days in the morning. Okay. And then Tuesday night, we always did St. Teresa Gym, which was a Catholic school there, the gym. We always did St. Teresa on Tuesday night. On Wednesday night was when we did TV taping.
Okay.
That would air on, I believe, Friday nights. So Wednesday we did that. Thursday was just a normal training day. Friday we had a training day. And then if we had a spot show or a house show somewhere in Kentucky or Indiana, we would do that Friday, Saturday. And then Sunday they had what they called the amateur show. So the guys who didn't really train with us, but they did like the Saturday class with like Rip or something like that. And then occasionally they would have us do those shows as well, just to continue to improve. And it was taped for our own use and it gets sent up to the office.
Gotcha.
But those were the ones like where you really got, you know, a chance. Like I had the fortunate opportunity. I say fortunate because I truly love being in the ring with them. Is I had Brock's first ever match.
That's insane.
It was me and Brock, and it was on one of those Sunday shows.
Okay. So it wasn't taped or anything?
No, I mean, it was taped.
It was taped, but not like put out.
Like only Danny Davis in the office.
Right.
Nobody's finding that on YouTube. Yeah. And I just remember because, you know, I always laugh and look back. We're about 2.5 minutes left and Brock is so blown up and can't breathe. And he's like, where are we at? And he's this genetic freak has turned into this monster that, you know, now he can go 30 minutes and suplex everybody everywhere. And I could probably go 20 seconds. But, you know, at that time, you know, so, you know, but I love, you know, like I love being in the ring. I got the chance to work with Brock for, you know, and Shelton for about a year.
That's insane.
And they were absolutely incredible. Loved working with both of them. Never felt a damn thing. You know, you got to remember Brock's a shooter. Yeah. So if Brock likes you, you're not going to feel anything. If Brock wants you to know he's there, he's going to let you know he's there. And there really ain't shit you can do about it. Right. You know? And so, you know, like there's all kinds of topics all the time about, you know, everybody talks about Brock missing the shooting star when he came up short on Kurt. But I've taken the shooting star from Brock 5 or 6 times.
Okay, that was my next question.
There was one that was a dark match in Knoxville. It was me and Shooter Schultz against him and Shelton.
Okay.
And it was dark at a Raw, and Brock hits it on me. And a lot of people on the internet always talk about it because they're like, oh, my God, he crushed that guy's throat. And I'm like, I didn't feel a thing. It looks like his forearm comes across my throat.
Right.
But I didn't feel a thing. Brock was so easy in the ring. He was green, you know, and he was learning the business, but he was so eager. You know, like you see the guys that really succeeded coming out of there. And, you know, the top 2, you know, everybody talks about, throw Randy in there too, but, you know, they talk about John and Brock. And, you know, Brock came there kind of different than everybody else. He was on a mission. He knew he was short-tracked. He was going to be there a year. He had to learn fast and be gone. But, like John, John and Brock, they were the first ones there every day. They were the last ones to leave every day. They drove the ring trucks. They did everything that they should have done, that all of us should have done. And there's no secret to the success of, there was no kiss ass or because they knew this person. Like those two jokers, like they worked their asses off and literally deserve everything they've ever gotten.
That's awesome. So how long were you in OVW before, I suppose? Because I know you said you got signed to a developmental deal.
Right.
So how long were you at OVW when that happened? Because I mean, you went to OVW to get a developmental deal and it ended up happening. Right. So how did that come about? And because I watched your match with your tag match with Doug Basham against Lowdown. And so I didn't know that you had a relationship with D'Lo. So I was not surprised, but you guys got a lot of offense in that match. I mean, it was, I don't know, just very,
and that's why, because of my relationship with D'Lo.
Right.
D'Lo, I'll never forget that day. Like I said, D'Lo and I still talk all the time. And he came to me that day and he was like, Beej, what do you want to get in? And I'm like, oh, we're not going to have much. Like, I'm good. Just you tell me.
Yeah.
And he was like, Beej, you can get your shit in or I can let the other guy get his stuff in. What do you want to get in? And I was like, oh, okay. All right. Well, then if that's the case, we're doing this, and this. Right. And they were great with us, and Doug was a great worker, Doug Basham, he was the guy that was originally trained by Danny. It's Danny's nephew.
Yep.
And then he worked for like Ford or GM plant and he left wrestling for a couple of years. And then he came back as the Machine and did the Machine gimmick with the Revolution.
It was like with a black mask, right?
Yeah, it was the 9mm, mask, which is crazy because here's the thing is when he came back and did the Machine thing, he did that for about, I don't know how long Jimmy did it for, maybe 3 to 6 months. And then finally he unmasked. Well, everybody that was down there for developmental or anybody had been brought down there, they didn't know Doug Basham from 4 years ago. Mm. But the people, the fans that go to the shows every day, they do. Because that OVW crowd base was, the same people were there on Sunday nights as Tuesday nights, as Wednesday nights. There was a true base of 150 that came to every show. That's awesome. When he, unveiled himself, to the 150 people, it was a huge reaction for them. They had no clue and he had no tattoos. There was no markings that you knew it was him. And in the back, everybody's like, oh, hey, it's Doug Basham. They knew. Yeah. But to the crowd, it was a big deal. And I don't think the boys understood that at the time. So, so I probably shortly after, I guess, maybe after that match.
So you didn't have you didn't have a developmental deal when you worked that tag match?
No, I was not.
Oh, wow.
No.
Okay.
I think I was whenever I did the jacked or metal with Bill DeMott and tried to take my head off with a clothesline and knock me out. And when he told me, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to finish with the power bump, but I want you to come off with the double axe handle off the second rope. I'm going to clothesline you off of there.
Okay.
And I had some people who were in the back who were like, absolutely not, like put both arms up. So you see me take the shittiest bump ever off a clothesline and protect myself. And thank God I did, or else I would be here to tell the story.
Oh my gosh. Man, I feel like I have so many questions, so many things to touch on. Who was your favorite to work with? And not even OVW, just all around. Who did you have the most chemistry with in the ring?
I think the person who was always easy for me, but we never got to do anything on TV or anything, was Scotty Saber.
Okay.
So Scotty and I actually, Scotty was under contract already, but we moved down there together. Same time, we were roommates for a year. Okay. And he left and went to WCW. Kind of the worst timing ever. Like he had 1 month left on his contract. He fought with attorneys to get out of his contract to go to WCW because Terry Taylor was the original guy who signed him.
Okay.
And Terry went to WCW. And then so Scotty leaves and goes down there, and 6 months later, Vince buys the company. But Scotty and I did some stuff in Ohio, some benefit stuff that was really, Scotty and I literally could just go in the ring for 45 minutes and not talk beforehand. And as a tag team, Corny just kind of threw us together, and we were roommates, so we had a chance to do a lot of things together. With him in the ring, and then with Shelton and Brock, absolutely loved working with both of them. and then it became Shelton and Red Dog. And then, did some stuff with Cena and Rico.
Yep.
That was really good. Rico was older, but he knew his time frame was short, and he wanted to make sure, and always wanted to get us, do his stuff. And then, John was phenomenal. I didn't get really a chance to do a lot of stuff with Doug Basham and Densmore, Rob Conway, or any of those guys. It just never worked out because they were doing so much single stuff and I was doing so much tag stuff.
Right.
The one thing that gets missed a lot is, Cena takes a lot of crap, right? Like what the 6 moves of hell or whatever. And they say that's all he does.
Right.
And Densmore got a lot of that, because, he did the Eugene character and all that. But people don't realize like John can sit there and chain wrestle for like an hour. John can do whatever you need him to do. Same with Densmore. Densmore might be, in the top 3 to 4 technical wrestlers I've ever seen.
Oh, wow.
And Densmore was phenomenal, but his gimmick had him do otherwise.
Right.
And it's kind of like John, and you see these guys with longevity, they don't need to do all that. All that stuff. You look at these guys that are doing moonsaults and everything. And I believe, everybody gets on, Randy talks about it, the leg slap and
right.
flips, dives and all that stuff. But it's true. Who's the last guy? Rey Mysterio. But who's one other guy you can tell me who's the tippy top of that profession in the last 20 years that consistently does stuff off the top?
Off the top,
Ray or Eddie?
Eddie, yeah.
But Flair goes to the top rope to get thrown off.
Right.
Hunter doesn't go off the top. Sean only did the moonsaults on special occasions.
Right. Brock
Batista never did it.
No, Batista, no.
Brock did it once.
Well, yeah.
Randy doesn't do it. Cena used to do the leg drop, but only in big matches. They don't go to the top. They don't put their bodies at risk.
Right.
Because it's about longevity.
Sure.
They're not going to put their, bodies out there for, this or that. Not that they're not going to work their asses off and do everything, but it's a career to where you talk about injuries and stuff like that truly can, take away, your earnings over the next 15, 20 years, depending on how long you're in the company.
Right. Well, there's definitely a difference between today's, the current wrestling product versus what was going on 20 years ago. Personally, I prefer the older style. All the high spots and stuff, and all, like you said, moonsaults, 450s, all that stuff. It's cool, but I'd rather, I don't know, it's more about the story and the people in the ring, like the personalities. The moves are cool, but I don't know, without the connection to the actual like people in the ring, I feel like you're just doing moves for the sake of doing moves, and that doesn't really, I don't know, to me, it doesn't really compute. But so I do want to touch on something with, because I know you worked the Brian Pillman memorial show in 2000, right? Oh, you did twice. Okay.
Yeah, I did it twice. I think I did the second and third show.
The third one is the one. Yeah, the third one is the one that's like that had Regal and Benoit, I believe, right?
Yeah, that was the big match. Yeah,
that was the big one, right? So I'm so curious because that show still to this day has like almost like a cult following. How was it working on that show? There's so many different names from different companies coming together, and you really didn't see that at the time. So how was that working then?
It was crazy, because of the fact that you're obviously just, a guy from OVW coming up, right? So you're not, part of, at that time, the main roster of WWF or WCW. So it was cool though. It was a long ass day. It was long, like the matches started and trying to watch all the matches. And then they did a bunch of stuff with, donations and guys coming out fundraising. Mm-hmm. Probably the main thing I remember from that is I remember Kevin Nash offered like $25,000 if Missy Hyatt would take her top off in the ring. And I remember he pulled out a black Amex card and he gave it to whoever the ring announcer was and said, in case you don't know, the black Amex has no limit, $25,000 if she does it. And she didn't do it.
Okay. Good for her.
But he was willing to give $25,000.
Right.
Fund. But it was cool to see all those guys and to see the matches. Obviously, that Regal Benoit match was, it was great because that was kind of the rebirth of Regal. Right. Because Regal had left and he couldn't have picked a better partner. And I think, Chris knew that, and Chris kind of did him a solid, and that was the match that got him back. And what an unbelievable match. I think they went 30, 40 minutes, whatever.
Something
it was.
Like that, yeah.
Just sat there. It was it was truly, like you said, you're a fan of the older style wrestling. It was literally just sitting there and like watching, a painting,
right?
Watching them go through everything. And it was pretty spectacular.
Right. So you worked in OVW until about 03, correct?
Right.
Okay. So I guess what led to you, leaving OVW? Because at that point you were under developmental contract, correct?
Right. So I had just, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go on. Yeah.
I had just, I was getting towards the end of my contract.
Okay.
And, we had, I had signed my second one. And then, maybe it was about in the middle of it. And, we got a new guy that came in, named John Heidenreich.
Mm-hmm.
So Big Bad John,
yeah.
as I guess he was known, or whatever part of the Legion of Doom he was, or whatever.
Yeah.
John came in and nobody would get in the ring with John at training sessions. He wasn't his fault. He was green. He was trained out in California, supposedly like at UPW.
UPW, yeah.
Cena came from.
Yep.
So he was as green as they came. And
yeah.
Nobody would get in the ring with him in training sessions. But I did. And I was like, man, I'm not going to sit here and let this guy get screwed over like this. I'm going to get in the ring with him. So I did. And probably not the best decision I ever made in life. We did something and we were doing something and I fed for a slam. And when he went to slam me, he didn't tuck my head.
Oh.
So he didn't tuck my head. So I basically went straight down on my head. So I had a bunch of issues, just kept fighting through it with football mentality.
Right.
And then a Sunday night show with David Flair. We go into the match and he shoots me off. I duck and come back and he just gives me an elbow coming off the ropes. Mm-hmm. And I took the bump. And when I did, I felt straight fire shooting through my entire body for about 10 seconds. And, he knew, the ref knew. And then, finally, after I could move, kind of like the Austin Owen thing.
Okay.
It was just a quick roll up, 1, 2, 3, done. Came back, had to go see a bunch of neck specialists and stuff like that and find out that I had basically herniated 3 discs in my neck. And I had what was called spinal stenosis, which is a narrowing of your spinal column. So where it should be like the size of a silver dollar where your spinal cord goes through, mine was about the size of a nickel.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to go through rehab therapy, cortisone shots, do all that, or I could do the surgery and then I'm probably done because at that time, nobody, people didn't come back from fusions.
Right.
It took Austin, 18 years to come back?
Yeah, seriously.
So, so I did the rehab. I did it. I remember I had to sit down. JR had come down for one of our TVs and sat down with JR and Cornette and Danny, and they were very specific on this is what you can do. This is what you can do. Corny's not going to book you to take any chair shots anymore. You're not going to, don't take a brain buster. Like you got to protect yourself. Like you got to have to do this. So I went through about 6 months of rehab, came back. And that's when, at that time, I was in the Disciples.
Okay.
And so that's where they did a deal where, I had left for a while and then I came back against the Disciples and I had been kicked out of the Disciples and came back and probably give it another run for another 5-6 months. And then had issues again. I was just sitting eating dinner and my hands would go numb and stuff like that. So the doctors pulled me back off. Well, when they pulled me back off, I had just signed a new deal.
Okay.
So I had just signed like a new, maybe like, I think it was a 2-year deal. I had just signed. And then I saw, I had missed a number on my cell phone and it was about 2 weeks after this. And it was like from whatever Stanford, I think Stanford's like 203.
Okay.
And then, so I'm like, when the office calls you, it's one of 2 reasons, right? You're either getting the bad news or you're getting called up. Well,
right.
I'm pulled out of everything right now. So I know it can't be good. So I let it go to voicemail. I don't get a voicemail. Then the next day, same thing. Next day, same thing. And I went into training and Danny was like, hey, Johnny Laurinaitis, Johnny's trying to get a hold of you. You need to give him a call. I said, okay. So I called Johnny and literally 2 weeks after my daughter was born.
Mm-hmm.
She's 19. So literally 2 weeks after she's born, I get the call and Johnny says, hey, we're gonna take our 90-day out clause in your contract. You're dealing with the injury, and so we can try to help you, get to Puerto Rico or Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And never did it.
Never happened.
No, never. And so they took the 90-day out clause. So I still got paid for 90 days, had the no compete thing. So it gave me a chance to get healed up. And then went down, did a couple shots down at TNA, down in Nashville, did a couple things down there with Storm and who was Storm's partner?
Harris. Actually, yeah, Chris Harris. They just reunited too. I don't know if you saw.
Oh, did they really? Okay,
yeah, over the weekend.
But I did a couple shots down there, then came back, and I had to figure out what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And I went up. There was a SmackDown taping, and I went up and of all people, this is God's honest true story. Of all people, the voice of reason, the voice of God that talked to me was Brock.
Really?
We went outside and I was getting ready to leave and he came and called up to me and he goes, why? And I go, why what? He goes, why do you want to keep chasing this? Like you're beat up, you're everything, like your neck. Why do you want to keep doing this? I was like, man, that's my dream. So I was 5 years old. He was like, you got your degree, man. Like, go teach, coach. I know you love football. You want to coach. You've mentioned that before. Go do it. And he goes, this isn't worth it. It's not worth it to put yourself in that situation.
Wow.
And he was the voice of reason for me, and I went home and I drove back. I think that SmackDown was in Indy.
Okay.
And I drove back and, sat down with my wife at the time. And I said, hey, so we can either do this and I got to grind through this rehab for another 6 months to a year, or, we can go the other avenue and I can make calls starting tomorrow and go back and get a coaching and teaching job in Ohio. And
right.
She said, well, why don't we, take a look at that? So I made the calls the next day and literally had a job lined up the next day. And
oh, wow.
That was it. And so I drove back up and, moved back. And I think in Ohio, I did like one or two little indie shows and stuff like that. But that was kind of it. It was, I had the injury, tried to come back and then came back probably a little bit too soon.
Right.
Had it happen again. And then the voice of reason, Brock Lesnar, said, hey, why? And that's why I like Brock. Brock's a lot of people, for whatever reason, don't know Brock and, get on him about shit. But Brock's he's a true, there's no gray area with Brock Lesnar. It's black or it's white. And he's got his beliefs on things. And he says it to you, the way he was raised and on a farm. And it's very, he's a shooter, like in the ring and out of the ring. This is the way it is. If he's got a problem with you, he comes straight to you. There's no backstabbing, no backdooring of anything. And, so he was the voice of reason. So, I've been fortunate because I've been out, whatever it is, like 19 years now. And, still stay in touch. I don't really stay in touch with the Brock, but still talk to Shelton, talk to Randy, like, all the time.
That's awesome.
It's like, he's, like a part of our family.
Sure.
And he keeps me involved. He'll say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And, because, they change writers every 6 months, right?
Right.
So, he'll call me and say, hey, how can I make this sound more like me? This person doesn't get it. So I stay involved that way. And so it's been cool. And now, obviously, as I told you before we went on, the Creed brothers and my connection with them,
yep.
The same thing. So I've been fortunate to where, I don't have that. The movie The Wrestler is so dead on. People don't realize that. Like, it really gets in your blood and the guys stay in it and they put their bodies through everything and their minds through everything. But I was fortunate to have another avenue to go.
Definitely.
And to go, but yet still stay involved somewhat. And everybody knows, like, when I go to a show and, if I go and take my kids or, go see Randy or Shelton's at a show to go see him, they know I'm not there trying to get a job. Right. Like, everybody from the office is like, usually the guys cling on, they come, like I come and I bust balls and I'm like, hey, whatever, like I'm not trying to, get a job. Like, I don't put anybody.
You don't want to be an agent or anything anything
if
like
I see the guys, and Randy's mentioned that to me, like, hey man, you ever want to, do this and be a writer or whatever? And I'm like, no, because at this point, at least, the hours that go into that, people don't realize, like Vince doesn't sleep. Like, that's no bullshit. Like, the dude doesn't sleep and he doesn't get sick. So he expects everybody to be on that same wavelength with him and working 23 hours. And that's also why he is as productive as he has been in this business. And no matter what, he's an absolute genius. He can make anybody a millionaire overnight. And he's a genius in everything he does. I mean, I don't know anything about what's going on right now with the whole scandal with him and all this. All I know is that dude was smart enough to work it into an angle, and he will, and she'll show up on TV and get people to talk about it. And they also were smart enough to market it as he would show up in character. So then if he ever does decide to discuss it, he can't be held accountable for what he says because he's in character.
He's in character, right? He's just, yeah. Jeez.
So if he went in there and shot a shoot promo for 15 minutes on this whole situation, nobody can say anything because they advertised him as in character.
Right.
He could say, "Hey, this is written for me." I mean, that's pretty smart. So
no, it definitely is.
And he could. And not saying he's not, but there's a couple other ideas that I've had that I've one in particular that Randy absolutely loves that they've never capitalized on. And I told one of the writers about it one time and he didn't like it, but it's absolutely genius. So you want to know what it was?
I do. Yeah. I thought you were going to say, yeah, absolutely.
So here is my genius. Let's
hear it.
Is the fact that what is the money in the bank briefcase?
What is it? Like, what does it symbolize?
What does it represent?
Yeah.
What do you get?
A title shot.
At any time, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So what is in the briefcase?
That's a good question. I don't know if they ever actually...
They did at the beginning.
Did they?
The briefcase carries an unsigned contract for a title match at any point.
Okay.
So if professional wrestling was not sports entertainment, predetermined, I never use the term fake because God knows my neck injury and everything else.
Right.
But if wrestling wasn't wrestling, if that's real and it's a shoot, why would somebody not beat up the guy who has it and take it and go cash it in themselves?
Right. Try to steal it. Right. I don't know. That's a good question. They definitely haven't done that.
Let's say, for example, heel Randy Orton is going, or let's say babyface Randy Orton has a match with Roman and Roman gets counted out. They come back for the next pay-per-view. Roman gets DQ'd. They come back the third time and this is it. If you don't win this, you never get a title match against me again. Boom. They have the match. Somehow the Usos get involved. Boom. Pins Randy 1, 2, 3. Randy's out of matches. He never gets a title shot against Roman again.
I like that.
2 months later, all of a sudden, you just see, let's say the Miz has the Money in the Bank briefcase. Then all of a sudden, Roman has a match. He's at the finish. He's exhausted, maybe with Brock. He's dead. And then all of a sudden, the camera goes to the back and the Miz is just laid out. Why is the Miz laid out? Here comes Randy Orton's music. He's carrying a briefcase.
I like it.
He cashes it in. New champ, never been done, never expected.
Right.
And I brought that up actually when Randy was straight being the devil and that son of a gun, he burnt down the Wyatt compound.
Right.
I was there with him when he did it.
No shit.
In Atlanta, yeah. And so I was there with him when he did it. And I told him that idea. One of the writers was there. And I talked to the writer. He said, man, you got to tell him this idea. So I told him, gave him my idea. And he was like, no, but the Money in the Bank's all about holding it up at the end, at the ladder. You hold it up, you want it. Yeah, no shit. But who says that somebody can't take it from him? You either have a baby face who takes it or you have a heel guy, whoever your heel is that you really want to get heat on. Right. Take it from the baby face. The baby face is laid out and then the heel comes out with it. Like right now, Seth would be great for that.
That would be amazing.
If he did something like Cody, if Cody had it and then Seth took it from him. Right. And obviously, I think it's going to end up working out somehow. I don't know. They'll get to it, but Seth will end up getting the Money in the Bank and he'll cash in on Cody. I'm assuming that will be his final victory, or the greatest thing that would send him over the edge is he cashes in and Cody still finds a way to go over on him. Right. But yeah, nobody has ever, if it's a shoot, why isn't anybody ever taken it? If it's a shoot, why would Brock Lesnar not go into the locker room and rip everybody's arms off? Right. And take the briefcase and just go cash it in himself?
I don't know. That's a very good question. They should though. Like
absolutely. Sports entertainment. You know, I got a buddy of mine. I'll give him a shout out. His name's Charles, lives in Cleveland. But Charles and I talk all the time. Like I was telling them about you, like, hey, hit me up anytime. Like I had nobody to talk wrestling with, right? Mm-hmm. So I talk to Charles all the time. We talk about it. And, but we always say, he's always like, well, why would that happen? Because it's pro wrestling. Like Cornette used to always say that. Because it's wrestling. That's why. Like, why would somebody do this? Because it's wrestling.
Right.
But nobody has ever stolen the money in the bank.
No.
And to me, it makes perfect sense that, you can make somebody or whatever. So if that ever comes to fruition in the next 2 years and they watch this podcast, you'll know where
I know where it came from. Yeah. I know they've done something like not that, but they've had matches where I think, wasn't it with Otis? I think didn't Otis won it. And then at some point he lost it. I think that he had a match again. It might have been Miz, actually. Wasn't Miz?
I think it was.
It was, right?
Yeah, but it was on the line.
Right. He knew it was on the line.
Stolen from him.
Right. So yeah, that's
and just think about
different.
it. Now all of a sudden, you steal it and you cash it in. Now all of a sudden, you're set for your next 2 pay-per-views because you probably got a 3-way now.
Right.
Because you got the person you stole it from with the new champ, with the person they beat. Mm-hmm. So now you got 2 more months ate up in an angle. And then maybe they just go back to the one person that they stole it from for 3 months. You got 6 months right there. And that's part of the wrestling, industry now. It's nothing lasts.
Right.
Like I heard Jericho talk about that. Like him and Shawn did the angle that lasted like a year, or whatever. And people can say, certain things are boring and stuff like that. Like John and Randy have wrestled like 400 times or whatever. But,
right.
How many people would take that back right now? Like they would love to see it right now, And,
oh, absolutely.
But it's hard to keep those angles going. And so much in our world now, we're an instant gratification world. And we want it now. And what they're doing with Roman, I sit back and laugh because I'm like, oh, they're not taking the belt off that dude anytime soon. They're going to let him run towards Bruno's, and they don't care if he's not showing up every week. But, they're going to let him just run that title so that whenever they do make somebody and somebody does beat him, it's going to be all that more important. Kind of like, Taker's streak.
Sure.
On taking it from him. And I still argue that I don't have a problem with Brock breaking the streak.
No,
because I don't, because everybody said Brock didn't need to be made by that, but Brock needed to remain a monster for the next 10 years. And
that's true.
It always gets brought up. Brock didn't need it to be made. He was made.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was already made at that point.
He was already made, but he still needed to be a monster for the next 10 years.
Definitely. Yeah, no, that definitely put him up into
I think that's a point that people miss out on all the time. They're like, oh, they should have done it with this. It should have done it with this. Well, why? You can take Brock when Taker's leaving and you need somebody that you need to carry for the next 10 years. Just like, with everybody that got hurt right now and everything else, when they needed somebody, who'd they turn to? They turned to Brock.
Right.
Last week he came out.
I was going to say, they just turned to him again.
Yeah, they just turned to him because at the end of the day, that dude is like the most callous and genius businessman ever, because he knows, like, he just waits his time. He signs his contracts. It's for a certain number of appearances. And then he knows that something's going to happen and they're going to need to bring him back. Because I guarantee you, he wasn't scheduled to come back this early.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Randy getting hurt and then Cody getting hurt and Big E getting hurt and everybody else, like, they had to turn to Brock. So he just sits back and, shows up, throws a couple of suplexes and makes a lot of money and walks out.
Do you keep up with AEW at all? I know you've been mentioning WWE and obviously OVW, but do you, and we briefly touched on it before we recorded, I think, about if you keep up with the current stuff. So what are your thoughts on AEW, if you have any?
I think it's great for another opportunity for guys.
Sure.
It gives more employment, things like that. I think that, because I went through the whole, WWE monopolized and bought the rival companies. So
right.
It was McDonald's buying Burger King, keeping it named Burger King, but you don't sell Whoppers anymore. You sell Big Macs.
Right.
So I was there and saw that, and the opportunities it took away from people because there was nowhere else to go. You had one place to make it, and that was it.
Right.
I think it's great from that standpoint. From the standpoint of it's on an even playing field, it's not even close.
You don't think so?
No, because you're talking a company who makes $7.6 million last year against a company who made like $14.2 million.
Right.
It's not even close. And you can argue that they have better workers, or you can do this or do that. I don't think anybody who is in AEW that Vince wanted, he couldn't have financially.
Oh, now, yeah. No,
financially, contract wise. Right. And I'm seriously thinking of anybody he would want, maybe MJF.
That's what I was going to suggest. Yeah.
He's the guy, but I think, I don't know much about it, but I think he's under contract till like 24.
Yeah.
So, I just think that it's very different. I think it's Walmart and Dollar General.
Right.
And I'm not knocking them as a company or anything like that. I'm just saying that you can't compare the two. And I think that Tony Khan's been smart with some of the things he's done. I think he got a lot of the dirt sheet guys on board with him. Yeah. And those guys are probably making a pretty good living off of how they're reporting things with ratings and stuff like that. But it's just not, as a global company, it's just not on the same terms.
No, I totally agree.
AEW is not going to selling out a 75,000 seat stadium in Australia.
Right.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to, whatever. You can say whatever you want to about Mania numbers or down or whatever, but they still had 120,000 people.
Right. They still get views. Yeah, man.
They still get tickets. And, they sell something different. And I just don't think it's close. And I don't think it'll ever get to the point to where it's close. Like when all this stuff just went down with WB, I mean, you had Stephanie step away from the company. Shane's not in it. Vince steps aside. Johnny goes on leave, and the stock's higher than it was.
Right.
Because it's still a publicly traded company.
Right. Right.
And I think that, everybody talks about it. I think Tony Khan's got too much fanboy in him.
Yeah.
I think at times he will speak up when he really shouldn't speak up and go off on people. And, you never see Vince do like pressers after a show, like he's Dana White and trying to sell tickets. I think it's a little bit of, at WWE, there's no question who the boss is. At the end of the day, I'll throw an idea at Randy, right? And he'll say, the old man ain't going to go for that. Or, hey, he doesn't, nope, this ain't going to fly.
Right.
And he'll say, hey, no, it's not going to work. But I think the inmates run the asylum a little bit in AEW.
Yeah.
Obviously they have more creative freedom and stuff like that. And they'll go to Tony or whoever.
Right. And
they get that freedom. But, there's a fine line there, to where you can't let them have too much control.
Agreed.
And, like Cody leaving, I don't blame Cody for, one bit. He bet on himself, he left, and then, he came back with a monster push, and he's going to be even over more now when he comes back. Cody sent him up, wrestling with the torn pec probably got Cody about $10 million for
insane. That's crazy.
But yeah, I mean, it's great that the guys have another avenue.
Right.
I just don't think it's on the same par.
No, yeah. I mean,
that's not knocking what they're doing, at all or anything like that. I know they got some talented guys down there and stuff like that, but, and I know some guys down there that, a lot of guys respecting it, FTR is great. They're unreal. You're an old school guy. I mean, they're great workers, but I just personally, and who am I to say, but, I don't get into the whole, spot fest, triple vaults and double super kicks.
Right. I did see, I'm looking at your matches, and you did work with, where is it? You made a tag match, Bobby Eaton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How is that? Bobby Eaton and Ron Waterman against you and Damian, who was it?
That would have been at the Gardens, right?
It says June 27th, 2001, OVW. Not sure where, but do you have any memories of working with Bobby Eaton?
Yeah, it was, you basically called nothing beforehand.
Okay.
You had nothing ahead of time, which I think at the time, probably I and Damian were good with. I don't think Ron really was. Ron was a former UFC guy.
Yeah. I remember I've seen him in a couple dark matches, actually, at live events when I used to go.
Yeah, by the way, I am the only person in the history of the world to ever tap Ron Waterman out.
No
so
kidding.
if Ron ever sees this, I want him to know. And he was so hot about it. Corny worked an angle where I did something and took his shoulder into a post and hit it with a chair a couple times.
Okay.
And then got him like in an arm bar, and Ron had a tap, and he's a shooter, right? So Ron's never tapped in his life. So he had a tap, right? And then so like a week later, like we're at TV and I said something, everybody's like busting his balls, like, hey, you had a tap last week. And I'm like, I mean, it's not every day you're going to make a UFC fighter crap.
Right.
He was like hot about it. He was like, we want to do this real? And I'm like, absolutely not. No. I never signed a contract saying if I die during the middle of this performance, I'm okay. Like,
right.
No,
right.
But yeah, with Bobby, Bobby was great. He was old school. And at that time, Bobby was probably 50, I would guess. But, he was old school. He did, and Bobby mumbled. I don't know if you ever had a chance to meet Bobby.
I haven't, no.
Bobby had the big Southern accent and he mumbled when he talked. So he's got you in a headlock telling you things to do. And you're like, whoa, like, hold on.
Yeah.
Like, wait, don't shoot me off yet. But it was great. I mean, you go out there easy as can be, and, those guys, Bobby, and I think during the time of OVW, a lot of guys didn't understand how important Rip Rogers was because of him teaching guys how to work, and Danny Davis and doing the little things. I remember one time we had a bought show at like a fairground somewhere, and it was like a 2-hour show. And the last match was me and Scotty Saber against the Suicide Blondes, who were Rip Rogers and Jason Lee.
Okay.
And we're getting ready to go out, and Rip's like, we got 45 minutes left on this. So like they had bought like a 3-hour show when we were the last match, and we got like 45 minutes. And we're like, me and Scotty are like, holy shit, like, what are we doing for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
And Rip's like, don't worry about it. Just follow us out there. So they went out, introed, we came out, and it was the main event. And, we get started, and before we lock up, Rip goes to the second turnbuckle. And he jahays with the crowd. They all boo. And he looks at Scotty and tells Scotty to go up. So Scotty goes up. Yay! Yeah. And then Jason goes up. Then I go up. And then they both go up. Then we both go up. And then we did like one spot that was like a hip toss. Rip Powder did with the... We were 30 minutes into the match and had done nothing but this.
Barely, yeah.
I've never even touched. And
that's amazing.
I remember one time in St. Teresa Gym, Scotty gave Rip a backdrop. Rip actually took a bump for him, and Scotty ran around the ring high-fiving the fans saying, I got to bump Rip. I got to bump Rip. But I don't think we really understood, right? Because we were so young. We want to get our shit in.
Right. You want to go out there. Yeah.
Right. Dang, we only got 5 minutes of TV. We got to do this, do this, do this. And, I look back and like, I'll never forget Jimmy one time we had a thing with the Suicide Blondes, and Rip hit me with a chair. And Jimmy said, stay down till commercial break.
Okay.
And I'm like, dude, I'm going to be down for like 4 minutes. And this is like when like Foley's taking like 12 chair shots on the wall.
Right.
And Rock and Austin are killing everybody with chairs. And like I had to sell a chair shot for 4 minutes, like through the commercial break. And I'm talking just laid out like I'm dead.
Yeah.
And Rip told me, just sell it. And it actually, when he swung it, he goes, sell it. And I stayed down for like 5 minutes. And then finally it was the finish. And I didn't even get up for the finish.
Oh, no.
Finish. And then, and then all of a sudden, got up and went back. But, those are the things of the selling the pieces and everything. And like, I personally, like, I'm a big Randy fan for what he does in the ring. And I know everybody does the whole Captain Chinlock thing on him and stuff like that.
Right.
But, 20 years, going on 21 years, just called up. You're talking 23 years total, but the facials, it's in this, it's selling. He's got a move that he can hit at any point, and it's all about the little things,
Right.
And Danny Davis was big on that too, because Danny was the original founder of OVW and the original trainer. So when I first got sent there, I thought, oh, Danny Davis, the referee. I thought it was the heel ref from old school. And then I didn't know it was, Nightmare Danny Davis.
Right.
You hear everything with Danny, but Danny would go in and he would tell somebody to work his hand. And he would literally just work his hand or his fingers for 20 minutes, not talking about anything, just work my hand.
Right.
And that's the old school piece. When was the last time you saw somebody work a body part? Nobody works a body part anymore.
It's rare anymore. Right.
They really don't. And so, but you get a couple guys that do it. Jericho will do it when he needs to. Randy does it. Mysterio will do it because he's a little guy.
Right.
But those are the pieces that are missing. So those are things, like I said, I think a lot of guys at that time probably took Rip for granted, or when Bobby was there with us, took Bobby for granted and didn't listen as much as maybe should have. And the ones that did really, their longevity has been incredible.
Sure. Before we start wrapping things up, I do want to ask you, just what's your favorite, doesn't have to be your best match or anything like that, but what's your favorite, just memory of being in the ring? Like, what's your, like, the tippy top thing that you look back on from your in-ring career that you were just like, holy shit, like that was fucking awesome?
Probably, man, I don't know. There's probably 4 or 5.
Okay.
Scotty Saber worked him at a show back in my hometown, Massillon, Ohio. It was a benefit show at a theater there. I think we went like a half hour, 45 minutes, beat the living hell out of each other, went through the entire crowd, broke the ramp. That was really cool. Shelton and Red Dog, we did a double dog collar match with them.
Rodney Mack, Red Dog?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and where we had to get color, and I got good color. Damien got insane color. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous how much, like, everybody was scared to death.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was really bad. I'll find a picture and send to you.
Yes, please. Yeah.
That was one. And then I really liked, Sheldon gives me a lot of props. Like, I still go to WrestleMania every year.
Awesome.
Randy brings me out and it's really awesome. But, I was talking to Sheldon and he introduced me to a couple people. And, Sheldon said, hey, this is the guy that really, broke me and Brock in the business.
Yeah.
And I think, that's one thing is just, the little things like working with those guys and seeing them, mature up into what they were doing.
Right.
Worked a lot of tag matches with Batista. We kind of, went our separate ways, but, seeing him because, we were in the Disciples, but Damien was from West Virginia. So he was only there at TDs. Okay. So if we had house shows on the weekends, it was me and Dave tagging together.
Okay.
When he was Leviathan.
Yeah.
Which was the greatest gimmick ever. He would just come in and kill everybody in 30 seconds. But I think, those are, a couple of the things, like I said, working with Brock and Shelton, those are the ones I think that really sent out. I love working with Flash. Flash Flynn again was another one that, if ECW was still in the Pinnacle, Flash would have probably gone there. Flash always got crap from other people about, how he looked in his body.
Right.
But he was the guy that could straight go. He's still wrestling. Flash is still doing shows. Flash doesn't get enough credit for how good he was and how good he was in the ring. He was absolutely phenomenal. Another guy with Slick Robbie D that should have had their opportunity and didn't.
Right.
But I think those are, the main things. It's really cool doing the show we talked about with Lowdown with D-Lo. That was awesome. Just because of my relationship with him. And
absolutely.
Kind of the one that really helped me get in. So that was a point for me that was, really cool.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I would say those are probably the best ones, memories wise, as far as, and doing the different angles. I had a lot of fun, man. Like I said, I met some of my, dearest, closest, best friends in that business and still stay in touch. And, it's, for as bad of a rap as that business gets at times, it's really cool. And then, seeing those guys continue on and seeing Randy reach the pinnacles he has. And now, watching NXT, which I wouldn't watch normally, but now with, the Creed brothers there and having coached them in middle school wrestling,
that's awesome.
Is really, really cool.
Yeah. BJ Payne, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, man. This is awesome. I love talking to you about wrestling, and just thank you so much. Is there are you on Twitter or anything, or is there any way that
Yeah, so my life has always has obviously transcended. So
yeah.
My Twitter is at American FB, like football camp. So at American FB camp.
Okay.
And then my Instagram is Coach BJ Payne, Payne.
Awesome.
So those are the two ways. I think I have on there, like, I was going to actually, as Ribs, as we talked about, I was going to put 6-time Southern Tag Team Champion like in my bio.
You should.
I was going to put that, but I think I just have like OVW alum in there.
Gotcha.
But I think one day I'm going to put it in there just like to pop Randy.
Yeah, you should, man.
It does it.
Well, very cool. So BJ, thank you so much. And
I appreciate it. Anytime you want me to come back on again and we want to dive a little bit deeper into OVW and some of the, shenanigans there.
Would love to.
It was absolute great experience, and, loved every minute of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man.
I appreciate you.